I stood alone on the balcony of a palace overlooking a city that wasn't mine, wearing a crown that felt heavier than chains. Thousands of people cheered my name below. Yet the only voice I could hear belonged to a girl from a tiny town in Montana, Emily Carter. The first girl I ever loved? The only girl I ever believed would stay. 5 years earlier, I wasn't royalty. I was just Noah Walker, the son of a struggling mechanic who spent every spare dollar keeping old pickup trucks alive. Emily lived 3 houses away. We met when we were 8 years old after I climbed into her backyard to rescue a frightened golden retriever puppy that had crawled under her porch. "You climbed over the fence just for him?" she asked. I shrugged. He looked scared. She smiled. "I think we're going to be best friends." She was right. We grew up together, fishing at the lake, building tree houses, watching fireworks every 4th of July, sharing milkshakes at the same diner every Friday after school. By 16, everyone in town assumed we'd marry someday. Even Emily used to joke, "You'll never get rid of me." I believed her. At our high school graduation, we carved our initials into the old oak tree behind the football field. NPC, forever. Before leaving for college, I bought the cheapest silver ring I could afford. It wasn't an engagement ring, just a promise. "I can't give you much," I whispered as I slipped it onto her finger. "But one day, I'll build us the life you deserve." Emily kissed me through happy tears. "I don't care if we're rich. I only want you." Those words became the foundation of every dream I had. But life has a cruel way of testing promises. 3 months later, my father suffered a massive heart attack. Hospital bills buried us. Our repair shop closed. College became impossible. Instead of chasing my engineering degree, I worked 3 jobs to keep my mother from losing our home. Emily stayed in Boston. At first, we called every night, then every weekend, then only when she remembered. She sounded different, busier, more distant. Whenever I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile through the phone. "I'm just overwhelmed." I wanted to believe her. Then one snowy December evening, I surprised her by driving 12 hours to Boston. I carried flowers, her favorite chocolate, and a letter asking her to move back home after graduation. Instead, I found her laughing in the arms of another man outside an expensive restaurant. He wore a tailored suit, drove a brand new Porsche, and kissed her like I had never existed. The flowers slipped from my hands into the snow. Emily turned. Our eyes met. For 1 second, she looked guilty. Then she walked toward me. "Noah, I can explain." I looked at the silver promise ring still hanging from the necklace around her neck. "You said forever." Tears filled her eyes. I got tired of waiting. "He can give me the future you never could." Every word felt like another knife. "I loved you," I whispered. "I know, but love doesn't pay bills." She turned around, took the wealthy stranger's hand, and walked away without looking back. That night, something inside me died. I drove home through a blizzard with tears blurring the road, believing my story had ended. I had no idea. It was only the beginning. For months after Boston, I barely spoke. I worked 12-hour shifts at a warehouse during the day and delivered food at night. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders of Emily. The diner where we shared milkshakes, the oak tree with our initials carved into it, the little jewelry box that once held her promise ring. One evening, my mother quietly sat beside me on the porch. "You still love her, don't you?" I stared into the sunset. "I don't know how to stop." She squeezed my shoulder. "Then don't waste your life waiting for someone who already chose another road." A week later, something unbelievable happened. A black luxury SUV stopped outside our small house. 3 people stepped out, dressed in elegant suits. The oldest man introduced himself with a slight bow. "Mr. Noah Walker?" "Yes?" "My name is Alexander Volkov. I represent the Royal House of Valdoria." I laughed. "I think you've got the wrong address." "We don't." He handed me an old leather envelope sealed with dark blue wax. It bore a crest I'd never seen. Inside was a handwritten letter. "To my grandson, if this letter has reached you, then I am no longer alive. For 26 years, I searched for your father after political enemies forced him to flee our homeland. Now only one blood heir remains. You. I read the words again. And again. It couldn't be real. Alexander explained everything. My father had never told us the truth. He had been born Prince Daniel of Valdoria, a small European kingdom. During a violent political coup, he escaped to America, changed his name, and spent the rest of his life hiding to protect his future family. Only after his death had the royal investigators finally traced our bloodline. I shook my head. My dad fixed engines. Alexander smiled sadly. He was also born a prince. The room fell silent. My mother burst into tears. She admitted she had known part of the story but had promised my father never to reveal it unless the royal family found us first. Everything I believed about my life suddenly changed. Alexander slid another document across the table. The Royal Council requests that you travel to Valdoria. You are now the legal heir to the throne. I looked around our tiny living room. The peeling wallpaper. The worn-out couch. The family photos. This had been my whole world. Why me? I asked. Alexander answered softly. Because your grandfather believed a man who understands hardship makes the best king. That night, I couldn't sleep. Emily's words echoed in my mind. Love doesn't pay bills. Maybe she had been right. But she had underestimated something. Character. The next morning, I packed one suitcase. Before leaving, I drove to the old oak tree behind my high school. Our initials were still there. NPC. I gently placed my hand over the carving. Then I took out my pocket knife. Slowly, I carved one final word beneath it. Goodbye. Without another glance, I walked back to the waiting car. As the SUV disappeared down the highway, I had no idea that the girl who once left me for a wealthy man would soon see my face on every television screen in America. And when she did, she would realize she hadn't just walked away from the boy who loved her. She had walked away from a future king. The flight to Valdoria took nearly 14 hours. When the royal jet landed, Noah expected a quiet welcome. Instead, thousands of people filled the airport square, waving blue and gold flags. As he stepped onto the red carpet, cameras flashed non-stop. Long live Prince Noah. Welcome home, Your Highness. The words felt unreal. Just 2 weeks ago, he had been unloading boxes in a warehouse. Now, soldiers saluted him as a military band played the national anthem. Alexander leaned close. From today forward, every decision you make will change this nation's future. The palace was breathtaking. Marble halls stretched farther than Noah could see. Crystal chandeliers glittered above priceless paintings. Servants bowed whenever he passed. But none of it impressed him. That first night, instead of sleeping in the royal suite, Noah wandered into the palace kitchen. He found an elderly cook washing dishes alone. Without saying a word, Noah rolled up his sleeves. Need some help? The cook froze. Your Highness, princes don't wash dishes. Noah smiled. Back home, everyone helped after dinner. For an hour, they cleaned together. By morning, the story had spread across the palace. The staff couldn't believe it. For the first time in decades, a royal treated them like family instead of servants. Over the next several months, Noah refused many royal traditions. He canceled extravagant banquets and redirected the money to children's hospitals. He sold several unused royal cars and donated the proceeds to veterans programs. He quietly visited orphanages without television cameras. He ate lunch with palace guards. He memorized the names of every employee. The people loved him. Newspapers called him the People's Prince. His approval ratings soared. One evening, Alexander entered Noah's office carrying a tablet. There's something you should see. It was an American news broadcast. The headline read, Small-town mechanic discovered as Europe's new crown prince. Millions had watched the story. Social media exploded. Former classmates couldn't believe it. Old neighbors proudly shared childhood photos. Then Noah saw a familiar face. Emily. She was being interviewed outside the Boston investment firm where she worked. The reporter asked, You dated Prince Noah Walker for years. Did you ever imagine this would happen? Emily forced a smile. He always had a kind heart. We were just too young. Noah noticed she never mentioned leaving him for someone wealthier. The interview ended. A few minutes later, another article appeared online. Emily Carter announces engagement has been canceled. Noah stared silently. Alexander looked at him carefully. Do you still love her? Noah didn't answer immediately. Finally, he spoke. I'll always be grateful for what she taught me. What did she teach you? That the people who leave when you have nothing don't deserve to return when you have everything. Alexander smiled. Then perhaps you're already thinking like a king. That night, Noah stood on the palace balcony, looking over the glowing city below. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about the girl who broke his heart. He was thinking about the millions of people who now depended on him. Little did he know, Emily had already booked a flight to Valdoria, and she wasn't coming to congratulate him. She was coming to ask for a second chance. The royal palace had become the center of international attention. Every day, politicians, business leaders, and foreign diplomats lined up to meet Prince Noah Walker. But on a rainy Tuesday morning, the receptionist called Alexander with an unusual request. A woman from America insists she knows His Highness personally. Alexander glanced at the visitor log. Emily Carter. He quietly walked into Noah's office. Your Highness, there's someone here to see you. Noah looked up from a stack of education reform proposals. Who? Alexander hesitated. Emily. For a long moment, Noah said nothing. Finally, he closed the folder. Show her in. Emily entered wearing an elegant navy blue dress. She looked almost the same, except the confidence she once carried had been replaced by nervousness. The moment their eyes met, tears filled hers. Noah. He nodded politely. It's been a long time. She looked around the office. I still can't believe this is real. I can't believe it either, Noah replied with a faint smile. An awkward silence followed. Finally, Emily spoke. I've replayed that night in Boston 1,000 times. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Noah listened without interrupting. I thought money would make me happy. It didn't. The man I chose cared more about his image than about me. When business went bad, he left without even saying goodbye. She wiped away a tear. And every day since then, I've wished I'd stayed with you. Noah remained calm. I'm sorry you went through that. Emily took a hopeful step closer. I know I don't deserve it. But can we start over? For a moment, the room was completely silent. Then Noah walked to the large window overlooking the palace gardens. Without turning around, he asked quietly, Do you remember what you told me in Boston? Emily lowered her head. Love doesn't pay bills. I've never forgotten those words. She began crying. I was young. I was selfish. I know. I've changed. Noah finally turned to face her. So have I. He opened a drawer and placed a small velvet box on the desk. Emily's heart raced. Inside lay the simple silver promise ring he had given her years ago. I asked someone to retrieve it after you mailed it back. Emily covered her mouth. You kept it? No. I kept the lesson. He gently pushed the box toward her. It belongs to your past, not to my future. Emily broke down completely. I'm so sorry, Noah. I know you are. And I truly forgive you. Her eyes filled with hope. Then? He smiled sadly. Forgiveness doesn't always mean a second chance. It simply means I refuse to carry anger anymore. Emily realized what he meant. The chapter she hoped to reopen had already been closed. She stood quietly, picked up the little ring box, and whispered, I hope one day someone loves me the way you once did. Noah answered softly, I hope one day you learn to love someone before you measure what they can give you. Emily nodded through tears. Then she turned and walked out of the palace. This time, Noah didn't stop her. As the palace doors closed behind her, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Not heartbreak, freedom. But neither of them knew that fate had one final surprise waiting, one that would bring them together again under completely different circumstances. 3 months passed. Life settled into a steady rhythm. Prince Noah devoted himself to rebuilding Valdoria. He expanded scholarships, modernized hospitals, and created programs to help struggling families. People no longer admired him because he wore a crown. They admired him because he cared. One Saturday morning, Noah canceled a formal banquet. I'd rather spend the day somewhere people actually need me, he told Alexander. They drove to St. Helena Children's Hospital without cameras or reporters. As Noah walked through the pediatric wing, he greeted every child with a smile. Some wanted photos. Others wanted stories. One little boy challenged him to a game of checkers. Noah lost on purpose and laughed harder than anyone else. Then he noticed a small girl sitting alone by a window. She couldn't have been more than 7. She was drawing a picture with broken crayons. No parents. No visitors. Just silence. Noah walked over. "That's a beautiful castle." The little girl looked up. "It's not a castle." "What is it?" "My dream house." She handed him the drawing. It wasn't a palace. It was a tiny white farmhouse with a porch swing, flowers in the yard, and a golden retriever sleeping by the steps. It reminded Noah of the home where he grew up. "Who lives there?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "My mommy and my daddy." Noah noticed she had drawn herself standing alone outside the house. "Where are you?" She looked down. "I'm waiting for them to come home." A nurse quietly approached Noah. "Her name is Lily. Her parents were killed in a car accident 6 months ago. No relatives ever came. The hospital has become her temporary home while social services looks for a family." Noah's chest tightened. He remembered what loneliness felt like. He remembered losing his father. He remembered believing life would never be whole again. He sat beside Lily for almost 2 hours. They colored together, played cards, shared chocolate pudding. Before leaving, Noah asked, "What do you want more than anything?" Lily answered without hesitation, "A dad." The word struck him like lightning. That night, Noah couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the little girl waiting by the window. The next morning, he returned to the hospital. Lily's face lit up. "You came back!" "I told you I would." She threw her tiny arms around him. Alexander watched from across the room. Quietly, he smiled. "I've seen that look before," he whispered. "The look?" "The one that says your heart has already made a decision." Weeks later, after careful legal reviews and following every adoption law in Valdoria, Noah officially began the process of becoming Lily's adoptive father. The announcement stunned the world. A crown prince adopts an orphan. Some advisors objected. It could affect the royal succession. It will create political problems. Noah answered with calm conviction, "A child is never a political problem. A child is a blessing." The nation applauded his decision. But as the adoption papers were being finalized, Alexander rushed into Noah's office with urgent news. "Your Highness, you need to see this." He placed a confidential file on the desk. On the front page was a familiar photograph, Emily Carter. And beneath it, one sentence changed everything. Emily had donated her kidney to save a complete stranger. Without ever telling anyone, Noah stared at the file in stunned silence. Maybe the woman he had once loved really had changed. But was it enough to rewrite the past? Noah read the file twice, then a third time. The report came from an international medical charity that the Royal Foundation had quietly supported for years. Emily Carter, age 27, occupation, financial analyst, anonymous living kidney donor, recipient, a single mother of 2 who had never met her. No interviews, no social media posts, no publicity. She had specifically requested that her name never be released. Noah looked at Alexander. "How did this become public?" Alexander sighed. The recipient wrote a letter thanking the unknown donor. The hospital accidentally revealed Emily's identity after receiving her permission. Noah leaned back in his chair. "This doesn't sound like the Emily I knew." "People can change," Alexander replied. "So can kings." A week later, Noah traveled to New York for a global humanitarian summit. His schedule was packed with speeches, diplomatic meetings, and charity events. As he left the conference center, heavy rain began to fall. His security team hurried him toward the waiting limousine. Suddenly, Noah noticed someone kneeling beside the sidewalk. A homeless veteran sat in a wheelchair, struggling to cover himself with a torn blanket. Most people rushed past without looking. But one woman stopped. She removed her own expensive coat and gently wrapped it around the man. Then she bought him hot coffee and food from a nearby cafe. She never noticed the cameras across the street. She never noticed Noah watching from the limousine, because the woman was Emily. Noah quietly told his driver, "Wait." He watched as she smiled warmly at the veteran before disappearing into the crowd. There was no audience, no applause, no reward, just kindness. For the first time since Boston, Noah realized something important. Emily hadn't come to the palace because she wanted a crown. She had come because she regretted losing the person she had hurt. And somewhere along the way, she had become someone different. That evening, Emily received an unexpected phone call. "Miss Carter?" "Yes?" "This is the office of Prince Noah Walker." Her heart nearly stopped. "His Highness would like to invite you to tomorrow's charity gala." Emily closed her eyes. "I understand if this is only out of courtesy." The assistant smiled. "No, ma'am. It was His Highness's personal request." The next evening, Emily arrived at the Royal Charity Gala in New York. She expected awkward conversations. Instead, Noah greeted her with a respectful smile. "Thank you for coming." They spent hours talking, not about their past, but about the people they hoped to help. Emily shared her dream of opening a foundation for children who had lost their parents. Noah listened carefully. When the evening ended, he walked her to her car. Emily finally asked the question she'd carried for months. "Do you think we could ever be what we were?" Noah looked at the city lights before answering. "I don't think we're meant to become who we were." Emily's shoulders fell. Then he continued. "But maybe we can become better people than we used to be." For the first time in years, they smiled at each other without pain. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a reunion. It was the beginning of trust. As Emily drove away, Alexander approached Noah. "You still love her." Noah smiled softly. "I don't know what the future holds. But this time, if she walks beside me, it will be because of who we are now, not because of who we used to be." 6 months later, spring arrived in Valdoria. The palace gardens were filled with blooming roses. And for the first time in years, Noah felt at peace. Lily's adoption was officially complete. The little girl who had once waited alone in a hospital now ran laughing through the palace halls, calling out, "Dad, catch me!" Noah chased after her, pretending he couldn't keep up. Their laughter echoed through the palace. The staff smiled every time they saw them together. One afternoon, Lily tugged on Noah's sleeve. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you smile when Miss Emily visits?" Noah laughed softly. "Do I?" Lily nodded. "And she smiles when she looks at you." Children often noticed what adults tried to hide. Emily had become the director of the Royal Hope Foundation, a charity that helped orphaned children, struggling veterans, and single parents. She worked longer hours than anyone else. She refused a large salary. Whenever reporters tried to praise her, she redirected the attention to the volunteers. Slowly, the people of Valdoria stopped seeing her as the woman who had once broken the prince's heart. They saw the woman she had become. One rainy afternoon, Noah secretly visited one of the foundation's shelters. He found Emily sitting on the floor, reading stories to a room full of children. She wore simple jeans and a sweater. No makeup, no cameras. When the story ended, every child rushed to hug her. One little boy whispered, "Thank you for making us feel like we matter." Emily wiped away a tear. "You've always mattered." Noah stood quietly at the doorway. In that moment, he understood something. Years ago, Emily had chosen wealth because she feared a life of struggle. Now she was choosing service even when no one was watching. People really could change. That evening, Noah invited Emily and Lily to dinner in the palace garden. As dessert was served, Lily suddenly climbed onto her chair. "I have an announcement!" Both adults laughed. "What is it?" Noah asked. Lily looked at Emily with a huge grin. "I already have the best dad in the whole world." Emily smiled. "I agree. But every dad deserves someone who loves him." Then Lily reached into her tiny pocket and pulled out a small wildflower she had picked that morning. She handed it to Emily. "Would you please stay with us forever?" Emily's eyes instantly filled with tears. She looked at Noah. I don't know what to say." Noah reached across the table and gently took her hand. "You don't have to answer Lily. You only have to answer your own heart." Emily squeezed his hand. "My heart answered a long time ago. It just took me years to become the woman worthy of saying it. Noah stood. From his jacket pocket, he removed another ring. Not an expensive royal jewel. The same simple silver ring he had once bought as a teenager. He had carefully restored it. This ring once represented a promise made by 2 children. He smiled through misty eyes. Tonight, I'd like it to represent 2 adults who finally understand what love really means. He knelt on one knee. Emily Carter, will you marry me? Emily burst into tears. This time they weren't tears of regret. They were tears of gratitude. Yes. With all my heart, yes. Little Lily clapped louder than anyone. I knew it. The palace staff, who had quietly watched from a distance, erupted into applause. 1 year later, the entire nation gathered outside the royal cathedral. Not just to witness the wedding of a prince, but to celebrate a love that had survived heartbreak, forgiveness, growth, and second chances. As Emily walked down the aisle, Noah realized something beautiful. He had never become a prince because he was born into royalty. He became one because pain had taught him compassion, forgiveness had taught him strength, and love, real love, had finally found its way home. 5 years later, the bells of the royal palace rang across Valdoria. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags and cheering as Prince Noah, Princess Emily, and little Lily stepped onto the palace balcony. Lily wasn't so little anymore. Now 12 years old, she stood proudly between her parents, wearing a bright smile that could light up the entire square. Noah looked at her and whispered, "Ready?" She nodded. He handed her the microphone. Taking a deep breath, Lily announced, "Today we're opening the 50th Hope Home for orphan children." Thunderous applause echoed through the city. The Hope Foundation, which Noah and Emily had built together, now provided homes, education, counseling, and scholarships for thousands of children across Europe and the United States. No child would ever have to feel abandoned the way Lily once had. That afternoon, the family traveled back to Montana. No cameras, no royal ceremony, just 3 people returning to the place where everything had begun. They visited Noah's childhood home, now beautifully restored. The old repair shop had been reopened as a free vocational training center for young adults who couldn't afford college. Above the entrance was a simple sign, "Dreams don't depend on where you start." Inside, Noah's mother's favorite rocking chair still sat by the window. Emily quietly placed fresh wildflowers beside it. "I wish she could see all of this," Emily whispered. Noah smiled. "I think she can." Before leaving town, they walked to the old oak tree behind the high school. The carving was still there, and a placé, and beneath it, "Goodbye." Emily gently traced the word with her fingers. "You really thought we'd never meet again?" "I did." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for forgiving me." Noah shook his head. "No, thank you for becoming someone worth forgiving." Emily smiled through her tears. Without another word, Noah took out his pocket knife. Beneath the old carving, he added one final line. "Forever begins with forgiveness." Lily read it aloud. "I like that better." "So do I," Noah replied. Months later, an American journalist interviewed Prince Noah. "What is the greatest lesson you've learned?" The reporter expected an answer about leadership or politics. Instead, Noah smiled. "The greatest title I've ever received isn't prince." The reporter looked surprised. "What is it then?" Noah glanced toward Emily and Lily, who were laughing together nearby. "Dad. And husband. Those are crowns no one can place on your head, because they're earned by your heart." The interview aired around the world. Millions watched. Millions cried. Years passed. When King Noah's hair turned gray and Lily became a successful humanitarian leading the Hope Foundation, people often asked how a foreign prince had become one of the most beloved monarchs in Europe. The answer was never found in history books or royal records. It was found in the lives he changed. The orphan who found a family, the veteran who found hope, the students who found opportunity, the families who found a future, and the woman who learned that true love isn't measured by wealth, but by the person who stands beside you when you have nothing. As the sun set over the palace one quiet evening, Noah looked at Emily and gently took her hand. Do you remember what you once told me? Emily smiled sadly. Love doesn't pay bills. He chuckled. You were right. She looked confused. He continued. But love builds homes. Love heals broken hearts. Love raises children. Love changes nations. And in the end, love is the only thing truly worth leaving behind. Emily rested her head on his shoulder as Lily joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them. Together, they watched the sunset, no longer defined by the mistakes of their past, but by the hope they had created for others. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Your support helps bring more emotional stories like this to life.